As promised, I've made a recording of my session that I delivered at ESPC in Prague a couple of months ago. So let's take a look. First things first, as always, I think it's important to know that I definitely don't think that I know everything. In today's agile world, we need to understand that it's near impossible to know everything. Well, it is actually impossible. But as long as you know everyone that does, you're in a good place. So remember to build that community around you, and remember, and I will be sharing some resources that you can on Twitter and on Facebook and even LinkedIn, you can build a great community to help you survive this digital era of ours. Here's just a summary of my session. So I spoke about co-innovation in Office 365 and how the different apps work together to just deliver a better platform. They definitely don't work without existing together as a whole. So I definitely hope that I can show you some really cool creative ideas and ways to use all the different apps together. What I'll be covering in this session is learning cultures. I'll be looking at creativity and innovation as well. Mutualistic symbiosis in Office 365, how the apps can work together and feed off each other, but in a good way. I'll be sharing some demo and some examples with you as well, and then of course lots of resources on how to stay up to date. First up is the learning cultures. Now this image that I brought up on the screen, I spoke about the smartphones that we all have in our pockets, right? There's very few people that doesn't have smartphones anymore. And I asked the audience whether they just have one app that does everything. I mean, do you have one app that edits photos, it sends emails, you can make calls with it, you can do your banking with it, or do you have multiple apps? And the reason why I'm asking this is because so many people say that there's too many apps and too many choices in Microsoft 365, which is really interesting for me because we already live in an environment like that where we have co-innovation with the different apps that we use. Many times I would be editing an app using a photo and editing it in Pixlr, for example, or in Snapseed, and then I would publish it to Instagram, and Instagram will cross-publish it to Facebook, etc. And that's a perfect example of how different apps are used for different things. But also, it's about knowing the apps well enough to know which are their strong points and which are their weak points. As mentioned, I have multiple apps that does image editing, and a lot of times I use them together on one image because I want to achieve a specific result. Maybe the one app doesn't do text editing so well, but it does the image editing great, or the filters. So please keep that in mind next time when you think there's too many apps to choose from, and think of your smartphone and the different apps that you have on your smartphone. Then another thing that definitely impacts this is that we definitely learn different at home than we do at work. So think of them rolling out a new intranet or a new system, and suddenly everyone gets trained. But at home, on our smartphones, we might have a banking app. And if the bank rolls out a new version of this app, and maybe it even looks completely different, I mean, what do? Do we just stop dead and say, there's no way, I'm not continuing using this app until the bank has sent someone to come and train me? Of course we don't. And I fully have understanding for why this happens, because I do believe that at home, we don't have anyone that's going to make us feel bad when we suck at trying to use a new app. And it doesn't affect our credibility at work, and it doesn't affect how people look at us. We don't want people to think we're failures. But at home, our curve for learning is completely different. We're not so scared to be a failure the first or second or third time. We also don't mind figuring things out. So if you install a new app to do edits of photos, do you mind spending a couple of hours to get to know that app, to try a couple of things to learn how it works? Of course you don't. But strangely enough, at work, we have an issue with that. At work, we don't have time to play, we don't have time to learn, and again, there's that self-esteem thing, because we're scared that the people that we work with might be better at it, or might see that we're not so good at using that app. So again, definitely a lot of emotions behind how we learn, and it's very, very good to always remember those things. So if you think of that as well, and if you think of the time we spend at home, And just reminding you that if you have a new app, you will definitely spend a couple of minutes or a couple of hours even. I mean, you know how time goes when you're trying to learn a new app on your phone or even a desktop app. Then think of it that it's much easier to spend 5 minutes a day to play around with an app than it is to once a year take 3 days off and to try and learn that new app. So definitely keep that in mind as well. Now, of course, as mentioned, the impact we have is that at work, we might have an IT department where you have to log calls and you've got to be careful to not feel and look stupid. So even from an IT perspective, I do beg the IT support and the training departments to understand and to give credit to the psychology behind learning and why people are resistant. It's not because they're just rebels and they don't want to learn. It's because we have this fear for failure, and we want our peers to, I don't know, see us on the same level, those type of things. So please have empathy. I think empathy is very, very important, and it's definitely a superpower. So please have empathy and assist each other, and look at the way that you speak to people. So these things, culture eats strategy for breakfast. Okay, that's very important because at the end of the day, you can have all the greatest tools and apps and best machines in the company and amazing bandwidth. But if the culture is not where it should be, if there isn't a learning culture, you're going to keep on struggling with these. Apps don't make people use them. Don't make a mistake. It's the psychology behind it. It's the culture behind it. So an important thing for me around this culture actually brings me to companies' mission statements, and that definitely affects or has an impact on the culture. Now, if you still think that by painting the cafeteria another color and putting nice ottomans down is going to create a new culture, then I think you're wrong. It might look nice for a while, but people see through that superficial stuff. So be careful of how you change or how you try and change your cultures. Now, my company name is The Good Stuff, and my mission statement, and it's also my personal mission statement, is to facilitate the evolution of human capabilities. So that means that every single decision I make, every job I take on, I always try my best to help people help themselves to go forward. That's definitely something that's incredibly important to me. I'm only one person in my company, and that's if you don't count Brahm, who's a sheep. So that's my vegan component in the company. But only one person in the company, and as that's my mission statement, if I had to employ more people, so there I am on the left. My biggest focus in life is to empower. That's my strategy. Okay, that's all I live for. It's all I live and breathe. So if I had to employ more people, then it kind of changes these things, and suddenly those people's objective is to make money. And whether they do it by transactional processes or whichever the way it is. But a lot of companies have a skewed strategy when it comes to that. So they have a top level management strategy that's all about empowering and going digital and doing incredible, amazing things. But when it comes to the employees, that doesn't reflect there. So if you look at the job descriptions of your employees, you'll notice that it might be, I don't know, let's think in finance, that your job description is to capture 5,000 invoices a month and make sure that the recons balance and that the debtors, 80% of the debtors are paid and 60% of the creditors are paid. I don't know. So that's all like, what would we call it? Like physical KPIs. I mean, for me, there's nothing about empowerment in there. That's all about making money. So if the company's strategy is to go digital, to keep on learning, to evolve, to empower people, and you don't reflect that in your KPIs, you're going to have a problem. Because then when you want to train people, or they need to make time to learn, they just don't have time for it, because that whole want to evolve, want to learn every day is not reflected in their job descriptions and in their KPIs. Please make sure that every job description in the company reflects the company's strategy, strategic objectives, as well as their mission statement, and then the extra bits, the transactional bits, because they need to have time to learn as well. Just like the company needs to grow, your users needs to grow as well. And if you don't allow for time for that in their KPIs and their job descriptions, then it'll never happen. Next up, I want to talk about creativity and innovation. Now, of course, this is the use of imagination or original ideas to create something. Inventiveness, the action of process of innovation. a new method, idea, or product. So maybe we think that not all people has that ability to do those things, and maybe because of our past, because of how we specifically focused on areas, just transactional or things like that. And that's one of my big drives in my company, is that I focus on digital literacy. This is definitely not my model, I just drew the picture, but this is the 8 pillars of digital literacy that I focus on when I deliver training, and I base this with Office 365, of course. And those are the necessary skills that I feel everyone should have. If we focus on developing those skills in companies as well, and about doing personal development, and as they incorrectly call them, soft skills as well, then you'll see that people will be more creative and they will be more innovative, which in the end, believe it or not, makes companies lots of money. So again, we have to step back and make sure that we invest in our employees, which of course they are our greatest assets. If we can invest back in them with the correct skills, then you'll see that that innovation and creativity definitely comes out there. And very important for me, when users are not digitally literate, when they don't have those skills as well as the soft skills necessary to not only deliver their work or their jobs or finish what they have to do, but to be happy, then you're going to have an unhappy workforce. And an unhappy workforce is a sad culture, I can promise you that. Most people are not happy because of the money they earn. They are happy because of the environments that they work in, the fact that they're appreciated, the fact that they're challenged, the fact that they're skilled up. So please remember that that's your biggest impact on the culture in your company, is when people are not skilled. And of course, I'm going to be taking a look at how to stay up to date. Now, today in Microsoft 365, that's become a very difficult thing to do because things change every single day. You have to build this into what you do every day. So if you've adjusted your job descriptions and your KPIs to make sure that your employees have time to stay up to date every day, then that culture will change. I mentioned this earlier on. If it's much easier, of course, to just take 5 minutes per day and to learn something new or to keep up to date or to go read an article than to try and put aside 8 hours every 4 months or 3 days a year, which is near impossible anyway in this agile world of ours. We can't take that long to learn anymore. If you don't on a weekly basis stay up to date, people, it's going to be a problem. And of course, this differs as per your job roles. Maybe someone in IT and in training and and support will have to stay up to date more often and on a deeper level, and end users are on a higher level or just an overview level. But please understand that it's much easier to stay up to date daily or weekly than it is to try and achieve that once a year. Here's some of the resources I want to share with you that you can definitely keep your eye on. So what's new in Office 365 looks at Office Pro Plus, and it covers all of those apps and what the latest feature updates has been. It gives you a summary per month as well if you scroll down. So this is definitely a great place to have a look at. Don't don't make a mistake to think that Pro Plus is not a very business critical app. I can promise you that it is. It's the foundation that all your users work on and that everyone uses. And it definitely has the biggest impact when it comes to productivity in your company. So make sure that people know what the latest features are and all these cool new tips and tricks that they can save time and work better and do better and deliver better and greater and beautiful documents. And especially with AI capabilities in our Office Pro Plus, design ideas, for example, all these cool things. It'll definitely help you a lot to achieve more. The Microsoft 365 roadmap's a bit more technical, so that focuses on all those apps. Think of Sharepoint or Power Automate or Power Apps, etc. So definitely focuses on those. What are they busy developing? What's busy being rolled out? What's been launched? And a lot of times it gives you a resource as well that you can go and read up about, and it'll also tell you when the release date is. So this is definitely something to keep your eye on. The Office 365 Training Center has unbelievable resources in there. So templates, quick starts, infographics, cheats, sheets, unbelievable content. You definitely don't have to create content from scratch anymore. Definitely would go and look up the Office 365 Training Center. And then, of course, Microsoft Tech Community, one of my favorites. Please go sign up for the Tech Community. There you can go to the blogs. You can go and look at all the blogs and follow the blogs that are important to you or that you want to stay up to date. All the monthly wrap-ups are posted there as well to say that this is what happened this month in Microsoft. So on the Tech Community as well, it really helps to build communities. So there's Microsoft people on there, MVPs, and all the other community members and leads as well, who's always available and willing to help. So please check out the Microsoft Tech community. Microsoft Docs, of course, this is my technical go-to. This is where I just find absolutely everything that I'm looking for. So from Teams administration or SharePoint hub sites or anything that you can look for, please go to Microsoft Docs. Definitely will help a lot. Then also remember that we definitely have an impact on what happens with the product. So don't forget the customer feedback for Microsoft Office 365. There you will see if people have logged tickets, if there's issues, and also if they've logged features. And if people vote for features and there's enough votes, then it moves up on the most important little list of things to do for Microsoft. So remember that you do have an impact. Go vote or go log a new request. Also take note that these feedback mechanisms sits inside of the apps as well. So there you can see if I'm in, Flow back then, and it's Microsoft Power Automate now, but there you can see also is the support, the roadmap, the community, give feedback. Even inside Teams, you can suggest a feature, and inside of Office Pro Plus now as well, there's a help tab, and it gives you contact support, feedback, showing you the training, as well as what's new in that app. So very, very cool places to take note of. And then also very, very cool, the Microsoft 365 learning pathways. So this is actually an app, a SharePoint site collection. And if you have this enabled, you can deploy this in your SharePoint environment. So you can spin up this SharePoint site collection, which has all this training that it feeds in from Microsoft. So they're the ones who keeps the content up to date. You can definitely modify the site to suit you. It's got learning paths in, how to get started with Teams. I would definitely use this for a training site instead of doing things from scratch. So go check out the Microsoft 365 learning pathways. Also the Champions program, great place to go and look for. You'll find this on Microsoft Tech community as well. So really some awesome resources there to get you started, to support your team internally. So remember your citizen developers. It's great to get them started on these type of programs. Then Microsoft has done a lot of investment when it comes to the adoption side of things, and I'm super happy about that, seeing as that's one of my main drives in my business, is to help people adopt things for the better, of course, and if it's good for them. So if you go and look again on Tech Community, so envision, onboard, and drive value with Microsoft 365 adoption tools, and you'll see that there's lots of different adoption packs, great resources, great articles, flip books, incredible resources. So please check that out. It'll definitely help you to achieve more. Also on that point, remember that on edX there is the Microsoft Adoption Services Specialist course that you can go and take a look at. That really helps you to get started, all the things that you should think of, especially if you're new to change management. It'll remind you of all the things you have to do to make sure that your project is successful. Then Ubuntu is definitely one of my favorite words. So that is an African word, and it means I am who I am because of who we all are, and that is the perfect illustration of community for me. Please check out Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and hook up with MVPs as well. They're not the only people that are knowledgeable, but we're always there to help. And there's some Twitter handles you can follow already as well. If you're new to this, maybe you don't have Twitter, and I can promise you it's my go-to place to learn. You don't have to go and follow a bunch of crazy, reality TV stars. Why don't you just go and follow the Microsoft product groups, and every morning spend a couple of minutes and just go and see what features have been updated and what the community are saying. So that's pretty important for me. And now we're getting to the whole mutualistic symbiosis side of how the apps work together. And I'm going to take you back to SharePoint quite a couple of years ago. And for those of you who might remember it still, those were all the apps we could install back in the day. So announcements, external list, issue tracking, links, picture libraries, promoted links, tasks, wiki page libraries, discussion boards, all of these amazing, incredible things. So if we look at SharePoint, back in the day, we used different apps then to achieve different things. We didn't just expect a document library to do announcements as well, or contacts lists, etc. And we were so used to using these different apps to achieve what we wanted to, which again brings me to the point where I'm surprised that people say we have too many choices. So, of course, these things have evolved quite a lot. And what's happened with SharePoint specifically is they started focusing much more on specific things that they're very strong at. And let's call it outsourcing. They started outsourcing some of these things to other apps. So, of course, the CRM will take care of contacts and those type of things. And our calendars are in Teams now, and discussion boards and announcements can be done with Yammer as well as with Teams, etc., etc. So definitely went into a role of keeping the core skills very close to heart and outsourcing those other skills to other apps. And that's definitely where the co-innovation seriously comes in. What's important for me, though, is that when you look at bringing in Office 365 or Microsoft 365 in your company, the communication and the awareness is very, very important. People need to understand when to use what. If you just leave it up to them, they'll keep on just sending documents via emails. But you have to not tell them what to do. You have to explain what the benefits are and why the one is better than the other one. This is one of the examples that I use as an infographic to show that this was the old way of working and this is a new way of working. And it's all based on your company's business rules as well, of course. Even though I absolutely love the fact that I can share files externally from OneDrive, there's still companies that blocks that off. So you have to make sure that all the different scenarios are addressed in a company, and then draw a cool infographic to guide users as to when to use what, but also what the pros and cons are. They need to understand why it's not a good idea to fire someone on Yammer, for example. So very, very good thing to take care and to take note of the awareness campaigns. Now this definitely brings me to the mutualistic symbiosis between all the different apps and how they work together. And I am going to show a couple of examples. And again, I'm going to come back to digital literacy. And this digital literacy, the cool thing is it's not just those skills or those 8 pillars, but each of those pillars gets supported by specific apps. And again, part of your awareness campaigns is to make sure that people understand that, I don't know, where's creativity? So PowerPoint and Sway and Forms and OneNote and SharePoint and Stream and even Yammer, all of those things helps to develop that creativity tool set, and it's supported. So make sure that people understand what the purpose is of the different apps. It's not just about telling them what to do. It's about getting them better informed so they can make better decisions. So let's take a look at some of the examples I'd like to share with you. So first up, of course, and actually I think let me just skip forward and just go to SharePoint first. In SharePoint, of course, again, as I explained, we've kind of gone to a level of where we've outsourced some of the things. So SharePoint becomes this hub that pulls together all of these apps and services to work great. So that means that on a SharePoint page, I can bring in the Yammer web part, I can bring in Twitter, I can bring in Stream and Sways, or very cool things. I can bring in Power BI and Power Apps and even Power Automate. So see SharePoint as this hub that brings together a lot of these things. Now, if we go back to Teams, and this is where I definitely want to do some of the demo side with you. In Teams, again, I see this as the ultimate hub, the ultimate digital hub that brings all of it together, even SharePoint. Because in Teams, you'll have your SharePoint, you can access your OneDrive storage as well. Of course, as we know, the communication is handled through Skype for Business. It's been rebuilt. And then, of course, Outlook, Kaizala, all of these things are present in Teams. Your productivity, like OneNote and Planner, your automation, like Power Automate and Power Apps, your other apps and services like Forms, Power BI, Sway, Stream, and then, of course, the people and content through Delve or the WhoBot to find people, to search for people, to get their contact details. Co-authoring works unbelievably well in Teams, so your Office Pro Plus. And then, of course, you can add other tools as well. So let's take a look at adding those other tools. So in this team, if I, for example, look at my branding guidelines and support channel, then in this channel, I've gone and I've added a PDF, which is actually hosted on my intranet. So it's a link to a specific PDF, which shows my CI manual, which I think is very important for us. So there's my corporate identity manual. I've added websites as well, for example, Pexels or Unsplash, for people if they search for images. If I look at the tutorials, I've also added a Stream channel that brings in or surfaces my videos. It's been loaded on Stream. There's another external website that's used for inspiration or for, I don't know, ideas. Assets, for example, is a library that I have with a lot of content in it where they can find the images. It's actually a page that I've built with the images on it, so I prefer not to always use libraries for this anymore. If we go down to, let's say, personal development, so in personal development, again, I've got different websites that we use. I've brought in the Yammer group for innovation, for example, so people that want to share knowledge and innovate. Under productivity, you'll see I've got my OneNote and my planner there to take notes, to assign tasks to people. Other resources there, I've got the CEO connection, which is again a Yammer group. And so under reporting, for example, there's my scary face, I've even brought in Power BI. Please keep in mind that the people need to have access to the reports. Just by adding it doesn't mean that they suddenly have access to it. So it's very important for me that you make sure that you also understand that the app where you surface it doesn't assign you permissions. The permission still comes from the parent app. So very, very important for me. I think in teams as well, something to take note of is the company-wide or org-wide teams, which means you can create a team that everyone belongs to. So anyone that starts in the company and is added to the AD or Active Directory will have access to this team. And in there, you can have formal announcements, for example, from different management. You can have the Yammer groups for, I don't know, the CEO connection. In here, I even have a page from a Sharepoint site that shows different Yammer groups that's important in the company. So like diversity and inclusion, new hires, innovation, and important processes, of course. So here you can see there's a form called Asset Order, and this is a Power App that I've actually added. So this is something that was built in SharePoint, and you can then, on this company-wide team, you can access some of the apps that you want to look at and use. So definitely a great idea is to surface all these things inside of Teams. And I honestly believe that it'll help a lot to bring everything together, because Teams is a desktop app, so that means, well, it's a web app as well and a mobile app, but it brings everything together for the user. They don't have to navigate away or find things, etc. And again, if you look at this general app channel on this company-wide team, I always add the intranet as well. So there you can see I've surfaced my SharePoint intranet. So Teams definitely brings a lot of those together for us and really helps to support those co-innovations. Here's just an example as well how I've used different apps. Here's a couple of blogs to inspire you. So this specific capture and share contacts with Office 365. I know that you shouldn't build business critical apps in Forms, by the way. I'm quite dead set on that. But for this little app, I actually built it in Forms so that I can share it externally. And that means that someone can fill in a form. It then goes, I've used Power Automate to then take that response to go and write it into my contact database on SharePoint. And it then also goes to Teams and notifies my team that I've made a new contact, and it goes to Planner and logs a task for me. So there's an example. It's an image I designed with the QR code from Forms that I have on my phone, and when people scan it, they can then fill in their details, and it'll actually capture the contact details, move it for me to SharePoint, log a Planner task for me to contact them, and then also it sends them an email with my V card attached. So there's a great idea of co-innovation in Office 365. That kind of brings me back to the end of my my session. So I really hope that that helped you a lot, and that you've started thinking different about using these apps and things together. So have fun and keep on learning, and don't be afraid to use a lot of things together. Sometimes a specific app doesn't do what it needs to do, or you want it to do, then go via another route. This is an example of one of those where I wanted to action things from OneNote, and OneNote doesn't have triggers in it, but I could select text in OneNote and actually create an Outlook task, which creates a trigger, and I can then use Power Automate to actually change that. So I hope that you enjoyed this, and I hope it adds value, and we'll definitely chat soon or catch up at a conference. If you haven't met me yet, come say hi and shake my hand and share your stories with me and inspire me, and I'll try and help to inspire you as well. I hope you enjoyed it, and take care and have a great day.